Commander Craxon stood before the Galactic Federation's High Council, his crystalline armor gleaming under the chamber's 12 suns. 3 of his auxiliary arms were crossed over his thorax, in what humans might recognize as the universal pose of too important to be here. His main arms remained at parade rest because even the most decorated warrior in 2,000 solar systems had to maintain some level of protocol. Another successful biological survey, Commander. High Councillor Vex's voice echoed through the chamber, their bioluminescent tendrils pulsing with barely concealed admiration. Naturally, Craxon's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smirk among his species. The carnivorous gas clouds of Nexus 7 proved to be underwhelming, as did the crystalline predators of the Sigma cluster. And let's not even discuss the supposedly unstoppable viral entities of the Zeta Quadrant. He paused for effect. I believe that brings my survival rate to 100% across 47,283 encounters with Class X hostile life forms. The council chambers erupted in appreciative clicks and whistles. Craxon allowed himself to preen slightly, his dorsal spines extending to their full, impressive length. Which brings us to your next assignment, Vex continued, their tendrils now pulsing with an emotion that might have been concern, or indigestion. It was always hard to tell with the Vex species. We've detected unusual readings from a previously overlooked system. The third planet appears to support complex life forms, yet the dominant species seems to have achieved spaceflight without proper Federation authorization. Primitives who've stumbled onto basic rocketry. Craxon's mandibles clicked dismissively. Hardly worth my time, High Councillor. Nevertheless, Vex's central eye fixed upon him, we need a thorough assessment of any potential threats before we decide how to proceed. Their planet designation is Earth. Earth? Craxon's translator had to cycle through 3 different algorithms before it could even pronounce the word. Sounds like something you'd scrape off your carapace after a bad molt. The High Councillor's tendrils flickered with warning patterns. Do not underestimate unknown variables, Commander. This species, these humans, they've somehow survived on a planet that our preliminary scans show is teeming with various predatory life forms. We need to understand how. With all due respect, High Councillor, Craxon's mandibles clicked in what his subordinates had learned to recognize as his about-to-say-something not respectful at all expression. I've faced down plasma-breathing leviathans and sentient black holes. What could possibly be dangerous on a backwater mudball that hasn't even achieved proper interstellar travel? A ripple of amusement passed through the council chamber. Even Vex's tendrils curled in what might have been a smile. Very well, Commander. You'll depart immediately. We're assigning you a research assistant for this mission, someone who's been studying this sector. I work alone, Craxon began, but Vex raised 3 tentacles in a gesture that brooked no argument. This is not a combat mission, Commander. It's a scientific survey. You will accept assistance. Their central eyes swiveled toward the chamber entrance. You may enter now. Research Assistant PIP 7. Craxon turned, expecting one of the usual stern multi-appendage scientific types. Instead, what bounded into the chamber looked like someone had given sentience to a maintenance drone and then dressed it in an oversized data collector's vest. Oh, my quantum fluctuations, it's really you. The small robot's optical sensors dilated with excitement. Commander Craxon, I've studied all your mission reports, even the classified ones, especially the classified ones. Did you really use your own severed limb as a projectile weapon during the Silicon Wars? The mathematical probability of surviving that maneuver was... Craxon turned back to the High Council, all 4 arms now crossed. You can't be serious. PIP 7 is our foremost expert on this sector of space, Vex said, their tendrils now definitely showing amusement. The assignment stands. You depart in 1 cycle. They raised their tentacles in the traditional blessing. May the void grant you wisdom, Commander. Something suggests you might need it. As Craxon strode from the chamber, his new assistant practically bouncing alongside him, he couldn't shake the feeling that the council was laughing at some joke he didn't yet understand. But how bad could one primitive planet be? He'd faced the worst the galaxy had to offer and emerged victorious every time. This Earth wouldn't even make his top 1,000 most dangerous assignments. He was about to learn just how wrong an overconfident alien warrior could be. "These readings can't be correct," Craxon muttered, smacking the side of his bioscanner as their stealth ship entered Earth's atmosphere. The atmospheric composition alone should be toxic to most life forms. He glanced at the planet's single moon. And only one lunar body? How do they manage their tidal warfare? "Oh, they don't have tidal warfare." Pip-7 buzzed excitedly from the co-pilot seat, surrounded by floating holographic displays. "They mostly fight each other over resources, beliefs, and something called political ideologies. Fascinating, right? And did you know they're mostly water-based life forms? Like actual H2O, not even the fancy metallic kind." "Water-based?" Craxon's mandibles clicked in disgust. "No wonder they're stuck on their own planet. One solar flare and they'd evaporate." "Actually, they have this amazing thing called skin that—" Pip-7 began, but Craxon raised all four arms in his universal "silence or I'll reformate your primary drive" gesture. Their ship, cloaked from both visual detection and that primitive electromagnetic radiation Earth's inhabitants used for communication, descended toward a landmass Pip-7's database identified as Australia. They'd chosen it as their landing site due to its relatively low population density and high concentration of wildlife. "Selecting landing zone now," Craxon announced, then paused as his sensors detected something unusual. "What are these energy signatures?" "They're everywhere." "Those would be life forms." Pip-7's optical sensors brightened with enthusiasm. "Earth has this amazing thing called biodiversity. There are millions of different species, some so small you can barely see them. Did you know they have these fascinating creatures called platypuses that break about 17 different laws of evolutionary—" "Millions," Craxon interrupted, his dorsal spines twitching. "That's impossible. No planet could sustain that many competing species without—" "Without what? Total ecosystem collapse? Mutual extinction? Nope. They've been doing it for millions of years. Some species even help each other survive through something called symbiosis and—" "Enough!" Craxon's mandibles clicked sharply. "Just find us a clear landing zone, preferably away from any of these supposedly numerous life forms." The ship touched down in what appeared to be an empty field, its landing lights illuminating tall brown vegetation, swaying in the night breeze. As soon as they powered down, a cacophony of unfamiliar sounds surrounded them. "What is that noise?" Craxon demanded, checking his weapon systems. "Night creatures, insects, amphibians, mammals, all communicating. Earth species are incredibly vocal. Like that sound?" Pip-7 pointed to their audio sensors. "That's something called a cricket. They make music by rubbing their legs together. Isn't that just—" "If you say fascinating one more time, I'm ejecting your personality core into orbit." They emerged from the ship into the cool night air. Craxon immediately activated his armor's environmental shields, while Pip-7 happily extended their atmospheric analysis probes. "The air temperature is perfect for your species," the robot chirped. "You could probably deactivate your—" "I don't take unnecessary risks," Craxon replied stiffly. "This planet probably has all sorts of microscopic threats floating around. I've seen too many warriors fall to invisible enemies to—" He stopped as something small hopped past his foot. What was that? His auxiliary arms reached for his weapons. "Just a frog, completely harmless, well, mostly harmless. Some of them are poisonous, but that's only if you try to eat them, which I really wouldn't recommend because their defense mechanisms are quite remarkable and—" "Focus," Craxon snapped. "We need to establish a base camp, somewhere defensible, with good sight lines." He gestured at a dilapidated structure about 100 meters away. "That building should suffice." "Oh, that's a shed. Humans use them to store tools and—" "Commander, you might want to scan it first for—" But Craxon was already striding toward the building, his crystalline armor glinting under the starlight. He was the most decorated warrior in the Galactic Federation. He'd survived the plasma storms of Rigel 9. He'd fought his way out of a temporal collapse. He wasn't about to be intimidated by a primitive storage structure on a backwater planet. Behind him, Pip-7's sensors detected several small but significant life-form readings inside the shed. The robot's probability circuits calculated a 99.9% chance of an interesting encounter in the next few minutes. "Should I mention the spiders?" Pip-7 mused aloud. No, this will make much better data for my research paper." The robot happily followed their commander, recording devices running at maximum capacity. Sometimes the best way to learn was through direct observation. Very direct observation. The shed's door creaked open with a sound that would have sent any sensible Earth creature running. But Commander Craxon wasn't from Earth and therefore missed this obvious warning sign of horror movie scenarios. "Primitive construction materials," he muttered, scanning the wooden walls. "Their technology level is even lower than our report suggested. Look at these tools. All manual implements, no quantum functionality at all." "Actually, Commander, many Earth species prefer dark enclosed spaces like this for their habitats. So we should probably—" "More of your endless Earth facts?" Craxon's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "I've yet to see anything on this planet that could pose even a minimal threat. Your database must be corrupted." He began pushing aside old crates and equipment with his auxiliary arms while scanning with his primary ones. "We'll set up our monitoring equipment here and—" He froze as his upper right arm brushed against something that definitely wasn't wood or metal. Something that felt suspiciously like— "Oh, wonderful!" Pip-7 exclaimed, optical sensors zooming in. "You found a redback spider web. They're fascinating arachnids native to this continent. Did you know their venom contains a complex neurotoxin that—" "A web!" Craxon's voice rose half an octave. "Something made this filament. Something alive." "Yes, and based on the web's construction, she should be right about—" Craxon's head snapped up just in time to see a small black spider with a distinctive red stripe descending from the ceiling. Before he could activate his shield, the tiny arachnid landed on his upper arm, exactly where his armor segments met. Time seemed to slow down. Craxon, veteran of 1,000 battles, watched in horror as the spider, barely larger than his smallest claw segment, bit through the microscopic gap in his supposedly impenetrable armor. For a moment, nothing happened. "Ha!" Craxon relaxed, mandibles clicking in relief. "Your Earth creatures are as harmless as I thought. Not even a slight— Wait." His arm began to twitch. "What's happening to my nerve endings?" "Oh dear." Pip-7's vocal processors somehow managed to convey both concern and barely suppressed excitement. "It seems the spider's neurotoxin is particularly compatible with your species' nervous system. This is unprecedented data. Your biochemistry must be similar to their usual prey and—" "Help me instead of analyzing me!" Craxon bellowed as his limb began spasming. The mighty warrior staggered, crashing into a shelf of ancient garden tools. "I can't. My motor functions are— Why is everything spinning?" "Fascinating." Pip-7 hovered nearby, recording everything. "The venom appears to be affecting your equilibrium centers, and look, your chromatophores are changing color. I didn't even know your species could turn that shade of purple." Craxon tried to respond, but his mandibles had started clicking uncontrollably. His auxiliary arms were twitching in different directions, making him look like he was attempting to dance to 4 different songs simultaneously. With growing horror, he realized he was losing control of his legendary warrior composure. "Call the ship," he managed to gasp. "We need emergency extraction." "Ah," Pip-7's processors whirred apologetically. "About that, remember the Pride protocols you insisted on installing, where the ship won't respond to evacuation requests unless you're facing a worthy opponent? I don't think it recognizes a small arachnid as meeting those criteria." "Override them. You said, and I quote, 'If I ever try to retreat from a lesser life form, let me die with dignity instead.' Would you like me to play back the recording? Your exact words were—" "Not now." Craxon's legs gave out, and the mighty warrior collapsed onto a pile of empty plant pots. "Need medical attention." "The nearest human medical facility is 47 kilometers away," Pip-7 reported cheerfully. "Though based on my readings, you'll probably experience several more hours of increasingly dramatic symptoms before any permanent damage occurs. This will make an amazing appendix for my thesis on Earth's defensive capabilities. Should I describe your current shade of purple as royal or aubergine?" Through his blurring vision, Craxon saw the spider calmly retreating back to its web. Was it his imagination, or did the tiny creature seem to be laughing at him? Just before his primary consciousness shut down, Craxon had a disturbing thought. If this was what the small creatures of Earth could do, what were the large ones capable of? The last thing he heard was Pip Seven's enthusiastic voice. "Oh, good. Here comes a local human now. Hello. Would you happen to know anything about spider bites? Your planet's toxicology is turning out to be far more exciting than expected." Bruce Thompson had seen a lot of strange things in his 30 years of farming the Australian outback, but a small robot hovering over what appeared to be a 2-meter-tall purple alien having a seizure in his tool shed was definitely a first. "Struth," he muttered, scratching his head. "That's a nasty redback bite if I ever saw one." "You can identify the toxins' effects?" Pip Seven spun excitedly in mid-air. "Your observational skills are most impressive. I'm conducting a scientific survey of your planet's defensive capabilities and—" Yeah, real fascinating," Bruce interrupted, crouching next to the twitching alien. "But your mate here needs anti-venin, quick smart. Got him good, she did." Craxon's mandibles clacked weakly. "No, primitive Earth medicine. I need quantum healing chamber." "The closest quantum healing chamber is 3 sectors away," Pip Seven helpfully pointed out. "By my calculations, you'll have experienced approximately 147 more muscle spasms, 23 episodes of intense nausea, and at least 1 existential crisis before we could reach it." "Listen to the bot," Bruce said, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling Doc Foster. She's patched up worse than this." "Worse?" Craxon managed to gasp. "I am Commander Craxon, veteran of the Silicon Wars, survivor of the Nexus Void. Nothing is worse than—" His declaration was cut short by a particularly violent spasm that sent him crashing into Bruce's prize-winning wheelbarrow collection. "Right," Bruce said, phone to his ear. "Maggie, yeah, got a situation at my place. Remember that weird bite you treated last month? Well, this one's similar, but the patient's a bit more extraterrestrial." He paused. "No, I haven't been at the homebrew again, just bring the redback anti-venin, and maybe some sedatives. The strong ones." 45 minutes later, Dr. Margaret Maggie Foster's dusty ute pulled up outside the shed. She took one look at her patient and sighed. "Typical," she muttered, opening her medical bag. "Always the big tough ones that react the worst. Had a rugby player last month, built like a brick outhouse, cried for his mum after a whitetail got him." "I'm not crying," Craxon protested, though his voice modulator was definitely hitting some unusual frequencies. "I am experiencing a temporary neural disruption due to an unexpected chemical interaction with a primitive lifeform's defense mechanism." "He means he's chucked a wobbly 'cause a spider bit him," Bruce translated helpfully. "I gathered," Maggie said dryly, preparing a syringe. "Right. This might sting a bit." "Wait." Craxon tried to scramble away, but his uncooperative limbs only managed to tangle him further in the wheelbarrows. "You can't inject me with that. I have no idea what's in it. It could react with my superior biology and—" "Superior biology that got laid out by a spider the size of my thumbnail?" Maggie raised an eyebrow. "Hold still, your commandership. This won't hurt nearly as much as your pride already does." "This is unprecedented." Pip Seven bobbed excitedly overhead, recording everything. "A human medical professional treating a non-terrestrial species. The xenobiology implications alone are— Oh my, I've never seen that shade of purple before. Commander, could you hold that color for just a moment while I adjust my chromatic sensors?" "I hate this planet," Craxon muttered as Maggie administered the anti-venin. "I hate this planet so much." "They're all done," Maggie said, packing up her bag. "The anti-venin will take about an hour to work. Until then, try to stay still and—" She paused as Craxon's spasms sent him crashing into the wheelbarrows again. "Well, as still as you can manage." "I'll keep him company," Pip Seven announced cheerfully. "This is a perfect opportunity to catalogue all the other potentially dangerous species in the immediate vicinity. Did you know that redback spiders aren't even in the top 10 most venomous creatures in Australia? Would you like me to list them in order of toxicity?" "No," Crackson's voice cracked. "No more Earth creatures, no more Earth anything." "Too right," Bruce nodded sagely. "Wait till you hear about the drop bears." "The what?" Crackson's mandibles clicked in alarm. "Oh, yes," Pip7's optical sensors brightened. "I've been studying those. Fascinating creatures. They're like regular bears, but they've evolved to—" "I don't want to know." Crackson curled into what might have been a fetal position if his species had ever been fetuses. "I want to go home. I want—" Another spasm hit, and the mighty warrior's universal translator glitched, filling the shed with what sounded like a cross between operatic whale song and a garbage disposal, having an existential crisis. "Should we tell him about the box jellyfish?" Bruce asked innocently. "Let's save something for his next visit," Maggie replied with a wink. Pip7's processors whirred with delight. This was turning out to be the most educational field research ever, and they hadn't even gotten to the funnel web spiders yet. The rural hospital's emergency department had seen plenty of unusual cases, but a 2-meter-tall alien warrior with crystalline armor and 4 arms was definitely going to be the highlight of tonight's shift, especially since he was currently trying to hide behind a potted plant while Pip7 enthusiastically explained his condition to the triage nurse. "And then his auxiliary arm started moving independently," the robot was saying. "I have video footage if you'd like to see the neurological progression of the—" "No footage," Crackson hissed from behind the plant, which was doing a remarkably poor job of concealing him. "No documentation of any kind. This entire incident is classified under general order." "Next, please," the triage nurse called out, not even blinking at the alien presence. "Sir, I need you to stop lurking behind the ficus and fill out these forms." "Forms?" Crackson emerged reluctantly, his armor still showing traces of purple. "I am a warrior of the Galactic Federation. I don't do paperwork." "Course you do," the nurse replied calmly. "Everyone does. Insurance information on page 1, medical history on page 2. Check any boxes that apply to non-terrestrial biology. But how do you even have boxes for that?" The nurse shrugged. "You'd be surprised what we see out here. Had a yowie come in last month with a twisted ankle. Paperwork's paperwork, love." While Crackson struggled with the concept of bureaucratic defeat, Maggie was updating the emergency department doctor. "Standard redback bite," she explained. "Gave him the antivenin in the field. He's responding well, though there's some interesting pigmentation effects I haven't seen before." "Fascinating," the doctor nodded, making notes. "Any signs of allergic reaction? Cross-species venom responses can be tricky." You mean this happens often enough that you have protocols?" Crackson's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Mate, this is Australia," the doctor replied. "We've got protocols for everything. Had a drop bear incident last week that—" "No more drop bear stories." Crackson's voice hit a pitch that made several nearby glass containers vibrate. "Right then," the doctor continued smoothly. "We'll want to keep you under observation for a few hours. Standard procedure for venomous bites. Nurse will get you set up in bed for—" "A bed? I cannot be seen in such a vulnerable position. I am—" Yeah, mighty warrior, heard it all before," the nurse interrupted, already steering him toward the ward. "The bikie gang leader who came in with a bull ant bite said the same thing. You'll get your warrior credentials back after the observation period." "This is unprecedented data," Pip7 whirred excitedly, following them. "The casual competence, the established procedures for xenobiological encounters, the complete lack of surprise at non-terrestrial life forms. Earth's medical infrastructure is remarkably advanced in ways our initial surveys never suspected." "Of course it is," the nurse replied, helping a still wobbly Crackson onto the bed. "Have you seen what lives here? We had to get good at treating bites and stings, or nothing would get done." But... Crackson's mandibles worked silently for a moment. "Your species hasn't even achieved proper spaceflight. You're still using combustion engines. How can you be so prepared?" The nurse smiled. Love, when you live on a continent where even the platypus is venomous, you learn to be ready for anything. Now let's check those vitals. Your purple spots are fading nicely, but that top right arm is still twitching a bit. As the nurse fussed over him with practiced efficiency, Craxon had a disturbing realization. These humans weren't just surviving among Earth's deadly creatures. They were thriving. They'd turned dealing with lethal wildlife into a routine medical procedure, complete with paperwork. What kind of species could evolve to be so casually competent at handling deadly threats? More importantly, what kind of species looked at a planet full of venomous creatures and decided to not only stay there, but develop an entire medical infrastructure around treating their various toxic effects? Oh, good news! Pip-7 interrupted his existential crisis. The doctor says once you're stable, we can document this case for their xenobiology database. Isn't that exciting? They're particularly interested in how the redback venom interacted with your chromatophores. Would you be willing to participate in a follow-up study? For science? Craxon's only response was to pull the hospital blanket over his head and pretend the last 12 hours had never happened. Unfortunately, Pip-7 had video evidence suggesting otherwise. High-priority report to Galactic Federation High Council from Commander Craxon. Subject Earth Threat Assessment to Classification Maximum Security. Addendum, please destroy after reading. Honorable Council members, and after thorough investigation of the planet designated as Earth, I must strongly advise against any military action, colonization attempts, or really any contact whatsoever with this death world masquerading as a habitable planet. My findings can be summarized as follows. Earth's indigenous life forms have evolved complex chemical warfare capabilities that can bypass even our most advanced defensive systems. Their delivery methods are particularly insidious, often utilizing creatures smaller than a standard data chip. The dominant species, humans, have not only adapted to living among these biological weapons, but have developed sophisticated medical countermeasures. Their casual approach to treating lethal toxins suggests either remarkable biological resilience or a concerning level of collective insanity. Most disturbing of all, humans appear to have classified their deadliest creatures into something called a tourist attraction. They actively encourage their young to learn about these threats in educational facilities called zoos. This indicates a species-wide comfort with extreme danger that borders on psychological warfare. I strongly suspect that Earth's seemingly primitive technology level is a carefully crafted deception. No species could survive in such an environment without advanced capabilities that our sensors are simply failing to detect. In conclusion, I recommend designating Earth as a prohibited zone under Galactic Treaty Article 7.3. Planets too crazy to deal with. Respectfully submitted, Commander Craxon. P.S. Please disregard any research papers submitted by Research Assistant Pip-7. The attached video footage in particular should be considered classified and definitely not shared at the next Federation Science Conference. High priority response to Commander Craxon. From High Council of Vex. Subject Re-Earth Threat Assessment. Commander, your report has been received and reviewed. The Council shares your concerns, particularly regarding the footage of your encounter with Earth's wildlife. The medical documentation provided by your research assistant was especially enlightening. We have unanimously voted to accept your recommendation. Earth will be designated as a prohibited zone, effective immediately. On a personal note, the Council hopes you have fully recovered from your encounter with the redback spider. The chromatic changes your armor displayed were quite remarkable. Several Council members have requested copies of the footage for strategic analysis purposes only, of course. Your next assignment will be conducting a threat assessment of the gas giants in the Proxima system. We assume you'll find their complete lack of solid surfaces and indigenous life forms more comfortable after your recent experience. May the Void grant you wisdom and better luck with local wildlife. High Council of Vex, Internal Memo, Federation Science Academy, Department of Xenobiology. We are pleased to announce that Research Assistant Pip-7's thesis, Chemical Warfare Among Earth's Lesser Life Forms, a case study in cross-species toxicology, has been accepted for publication in the Federation Journal of Xenobiological Studies. The accompanying video documentation has been nominated for this year's Achievement in Field Research Award. Special thanks to Commander Craxon for his unwitting but invaluable contribution to this groundbreaking research. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Australian outback, a small redback spider was explaining to her children why the shed had a new plaque designating it as Historic Site #47, location of first documented arachnid victory in interstellar combat. And in a rural hospital's break room, a certain nurse was adding another unusual case file to what the staff called their "You Wouldn't Believe What Came In Today" collection. As for PIP-7, they went on to become the Federation's leading expert on Earth's wildlife, though they had some difficulty convincing their peers that drop bears were actually a human practical joke rather than a real species. And Commander Craxon? He developed a peculiar habit of thoroughly scanning every room he entered for the rest of his career. He also never went anywhere without a comprehensive supply of anti-venin, just in case. You never know when you might run into something small and eight-legged with a point to prove.